there's a bunch of other people in there from around the area too that you may or may not know, you know, I don't know. How about the horse, you see him? Laying down there, he got shot, I think. That was Sonny. Thank you, Mindy. Phase 2, we want to move on?
I wanted to do questions now or at the end.
Okay, yeah, let's do a question. If anybody has any questions? No?
Yeah, I thought we were gonna talk about the soldiers that were in
We are.
Jefferson County. We don't think they.
We will, we're going to
That
get
was
to that.
wonderful.
We've got more to do.
That was very interesting.
At this particular time, though, if you have any questions, I'd like to direct it to Sergeant Kelly Nowak right there. One of those secret soldiers we're talking about.
No, I just wondered about the soldiers that were in Jefferson County.
Yeah.
I know they were from both sides.
Yes.
Big time. Jefferson County, big time.
Any questions? If any of you were at the bicentennial at Hillsborough, you saw us firing a cannon. I was one of the guys firing the cannon. I was also sitting in a tent with my dress on, quilting. I do that quite often. I am part of an artillery group, Big River Artillery, and I do go out on the field. They do not want us to bring attributes to let us know that they're ladies. They ask us to hide our hair, our physiques, all of it. And yes, we do crack, scratch, spit, and all that good stuff to make it look good. And my son sits up. I'm Confederate. My youngest son is Confederate. He is on the artillery with me. My oldest son, we get to shoot at because he is Union and he's a drummer.
Just like for real in the Civil War.
Just a lot of families were divided, yes. So it was it is very natural for us to aim at each other. Sometimes it spills over into the household. I hear one son yell at the other one in derogatory, "Damn Yankee," and the other comes back with something along the lines of,
Probably Rebel Scum or something.
yeah. It does happen in our household, which is some things that happened. I know reenacted is a lot softer than it originally was. But when we are on the field, we do maintain our masculinity. Any questions about how women would have done that? I know in the story they talked about how in today's society, we recognize female and male even no matter how they're dressed because we've been trained. Back in this time, it was not done, it was not expected. So for me to have pulled my hair back, cut it short, put on a uniform, would not have known me. Because I do not have my corsets on, I do not have 7 layers of clothes that women wore at that time. I strictly have on a pair of slacks, boots, uniform. You'll notice my uniform is not as nice as these Union guys. Well, yeah, Confederates in Missouri did not have all the clothing that was necessary. We wore what we had. So that's the reason I am not completely dressed full uniform. Any questions?
Guess not.
Guess not.
If you want to go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn the big light off.
Prior to the outbreak of the war between the states, small communities existed in the Rock Creek area along the road cutting through northern Jefferson County into St. Louis County, near the town of Fenton, west of the Merrimack. Early pioneers such as Isaac Sullivan, who married Melinda Williams, the daughter of a circuit-riding preacher named Thomas Williams. Reverend Williams established the first Methodist church and schoolhouse in this community. Among other families that settled in the Murphy-Fenton area were Caleb Bowles, Samuel Rudder, Humphrey Dunavant, and Samuel Vanover. These families attended the same church, their children went to the same small school, and many of them intermarried, forming strong family bonds and friendship. And then the country was torn apart by war. Although citizens living in the states that were clearly Union or Confederate suffered terrible hardships and pain, the residents of Missouri, a state that was split over the question of slavery, found themselves not only fighting a national war, but in particularly precarious one within their own neighborhoods. The question of succession and support of the opposing sides caused a split in the Fenton Methodist Church. Those with sympathies for the South cause left and established the Methodist Episcopal Church South, taking Bowles, Rudder, Price, and Vanover families from the original congregation. A small sanctuary was constructed, which stands this day and is used by the Fenton Church of Christ congregation. The able-bodied men who had been among the slaveholding families fled to places like southern Missouri, Arkansas, and Kentucky to join the Confederate cause, leaving behind mothers, wives, sisters, and small children to deal with the daily upkeep of the small farms and to fend off bitter suspicion of neighbors who had once been their close friends. So it was that Mollie Rudder, the wife of Benjamin F. Rudder, a Confederate soldier, and a mother of four-year-old Jenny and an infant son, Benny, sat down to write a heartfelt letter to her husband in the early summer of 1864. Despite her knowledge that communication with her loved one was risky, she was desperate to pour out her heart out to him.
Lonely Valley, Missouri, June 11, 1864. My ever dear husband, it is with the greatest of pleasure that I seek myself to write to you. We are all in very good health at present, and my fondest hope is that this may reach you in perfect safety and find you enjoying the best of health. The children are both well and hearty, and Jenny is pretty near large enough to go to school. The baby is not very large, but he is smart. He was 17 months old the 3rd of this month. His Uncle John R. was down in March, and Ma went home with him and stayed 2 months. John took a great liking to Benny, and when Ma came home, he sent him $5 for a present. It is very well that somebody cares about him, for from a baby he knows nothing about a father's care. And Jenny but little, though she talks a heap about her pa. I guess you've heard about Al getting out of prison. He got out of prison and has gone to Idaho. The gold mines. Mr. Ashley and Jim Burris is gone there also. John Poindexter, Jack Pippin, and John Hill has gone to California with William Lewis and his sister Sally Lewis. Martin is getting along very well with his crop. The farmers are very backward with their crops this spring, owing to the wet weather. He has the field above the house in oats, and the rest in corn, except about 2 acres. He is going to put in buckwheat. I find the seed, and he gives me half of it. I want to put it in because I have no wheat sowed, too, and I can have it to make cakes of in winter. But I think of it, if it happens, I will have wheat sowed this fall. But I am in hopes that you will be home by sowing time, and you can arrange the matter yourself if it does not pay to buy flour at $10 a barrel. Though I am learning to be pretty shifty. I had some wood hauled off this spring, and it got me $8 a barrel, and I have sold $168 worth of butter and eggs since March, and that keeps me in groceries. All 3 of the cows has calves, and I get plenty of milk. I will soon have chickens large enough to fry. Oh, my dear, if you were only here to help me out, then everything would be a pleasure to both of us. But that's impossible, I guess, without there's new arrangements made. Oh, my dear, I would give everything we've got if you could only come home and live in peace. But it seems as though that will not be soon. Sorry. If I could only get a few lines written by your dear hands, it would be such a great pleasure to me. But I can't think that you would forget and neglect me if you had a chance to write. but I have never got but just a few lines from you since you've been gone, and I think you certainly would have gotten more of that from me, for I have written every chance I got, and hope and trust that you will do the same. And don't forget your little circle at home. Only 3 of us. And how lonely I get sometimes. When Sis is at school and Martin is at work, I almost take the blues. But then again, I think it's foolishness to give up to such things. I try to keep in good spirits and think that there's a better day coming when we can all live in peace at home. I have never lost one thing by the soldiers yet. Only I give 10 or 12 their supplies one night, but they behave themselves well, and I think that I have come off fine. James Harbison has got the measles, and Jenny, his wife, looks fine. She looks as though she's well fed. Jenny Shivers and Ira Green is married, and Elizabeth Bowles and David Harvey is married, and ain't Betty Sitt like to have tore up the bottom. I guess she'll make a new will now. She says that David never shall have any of their property, and so I don't know how they will make it. They were married down at the church. James and Willie, Charlie, and John Price is at Fort Delaware in Delaware, and Lieutenant Bowles is at Point Lookout, Maryland, and Captain Mack is at Johnson's Island, Ohio, and David S. is at Alton, Illinois. Yet he has the dropsy. His doctors say he will never get over it, but still they will not let him out. I don't know when there will be an exchange. I've got near neighbors. Old cousin Tom William has moved down from Johnson County and has finished old Bartholomew's house, and they're living in it. We can holler across to one another. He is tending to Ma's farm this year. Brewery and Jane has moved back to Hillsboro, and it's to be hoped that they will stay there for all the good they done while they was here. Old Bet's had another mare. Every person that sees it says that it is a mighty good colt. I am sending her over to Thomas again this year. The other 2 are in the woods someplace. The horse is large enough to work. As it is growing late, I must draw my few lines to a close. I want you to write every chance you get, and I will do the same, though we'll have to be like a thief in the night for fear of being arrested. Take good care of yourself, and may God guide and protect you is the prayer of your beloved Mollie. Goodbye from your devoted Mollie. Oh, please, write every chance you get.
Jefferson County, near Fenton, Missouri, August 2nd, 1864. Captain Kaiser, Sir, by the hands of Sergeant Dennis, I wish to communicate some of the facts relating to some letters recently captured by a Captain W.J. Buxton, which are in possession of the Marshal Department. The parties who wrote the following signed letters, Mrs. Elizabeth Price, Mollie Rudder, and one other signed Jeannie, as well as some others I or have been well acquainted with all these other perhaps in your possession. I wish to say that the above are the rebels and the husbands, sons, brothers in the rebel army since '62, and further, that the named persons, to the best of my knowledge, are or have been actively engaged in participants in a rebel mail line running from St. Louis to Bowles and Vandover neighborhood, thence through Antire Creek settlement to the Big River near the mouth, thence along a stream to the Jefferson or Biddick Mill, and there taking the direction of G.B. Green Store Incorporated to Pines Ridge beyond Rolla, the mail on which is carried at present by one Alex Smith and Company, who according to my best information resides in Piney Ridge, 25 miles from Rolla. I will give further particulars and information as soon as I can get it to the city. Yours, J.W. Sullins. think we have to arrest this lady at this time. I believe you're accused of being a spy. You're taken into custody. We have a nice jail in St. Louis. We'll be putting you in.
Mollie's letter was intercepted by the federal army as she was arrested. Adding salt to the wound, she was betrayed by J. William Sullivan, Benjamin's cousin. She was taken to Corrupt prison where she was a prisoner of war for 2 months. She was released after it was determined the contents of her letter was not sufficient support to charge treason. In May of 1865, B.F. Rudder and his father-in-law, Marshall Price, who were serving in the 10th Missouri Infantry in Sterling Price's Trans-Mississippi Army, were captured and sent to Camp Allen in Louisiana, where they were held as prisoners. They were released in October of 1865 and returned home. This is only one example of how divided the loyalties during the bitter conflict affected local families, tearing apart relationships and having deep scars that hurt and mistrust. Southern sympathizers were not only the ones to suffer. Next, we will hear the heartbreaking letter of Sullivan Ballou of Rhode Island militia.
Ladies and gentlemen, next we're going to hear from Eric Huff, who's going to read the letter of Sullivan Ballou. Heard turncoats? It's happened a lot. Happened a lot, folks. As you saw in the movie.
Sir,
Private.
I just came from the battlefield, and I was on burial detail, and on the camp where we overran the Yankees. I found this letter, took it to First Sergeant. He said I should bring it to you in case it had some military interest.
Looks innocent enough. Trooper, can you read? We'll take care of that for you.
July 14th, 1861, Camp Clark, Washington. My very dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause of which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans on the triumph of the government and how great a debt we owe those who went before us through the blood and sufferings of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all the joys in this life to help maintain this government and pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables, but nothing but omnipotence could break. And yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me unresistably on with all these chains to the battlefield. The memories of the blissful moments I've spent with you come creeping over me, and I feel most gratified to God and to you that I have enjoyed them for so long. And hard as it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years when, God willing, we might have lived and loved together and seen our sons grow up to honorable manhood around us. I have, I know, but few small claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me. Perhaps it's a wafted prayer of my little Edgar that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you, and with my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and many pains I have caused you, how thoughtless and foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly I would wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness. But oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they love, I shall always be near you, in the gladdest day, in the darkest nights, always, always. And if there be a soft breeze upon your cheek, it shall be my breath, as a cool air fans your throbbing temple. It shall be my spirit passing. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and wait for thee, for we shall meet again.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sullivan Ballou was killed a few weeks later at the First Battle of Bull Run. I think we have another little insert to that, do we, or not? Okay.
If you know it, sing with us.
How sweet the sound that found a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Thank you. Eric was very fortunate a few years back when Ken Burns was in St. Louis and getting to do his series on Channel 9, and that's where he kind of came up with this idea, met Ken Burns at Webster University. So this is not the first time he's done this. So I want to thank everybody really for coming. I mean, else we wouldn't be here, you know. Duncan and Kelly.
Thank you, guys.
Any more questions now?
Questions at this point, you're welcome to ask them. Yes?
I assume Sarah got that letter?
Yes, he had said in between, she got the letter, but it wasn't until after he was killed. He was killed in that battle, and the soldier that brought the letter to him actually had found the letter on his dead body.
That was a beautiful letter.
Yeah, it was a heartbreaking letter.
Yeah.
This is, over here, we have pictures of the Bull Run, and these are actually pictures of Sullivan Ballou and his wife, if you would like to, later come and look at that. And over on this side, I have the map of the area where the people that were involved in this letter, Confederate letter writing, this is where they lived, which is actually here. You recognize some of the names, the Vandemers, the Rudders, the Sullins. It was the neighbor and actually a cousin that turned over these letters from his cousin's wife to Captain Buxton, who took to the federal officers. Yeah, took it to the federal officers, and so it was a hard thing. Mollie Rudder and her stepmother Elizabeth were arrested and served 2 months in prison because of these letters, but they were not. After they read them, the officers decided that there wasn't anything in them. They were accused of spying, and they decided that there was nothing in them that would make them feel like that they were giving away any kind of secrets. But it was a dangerous time. You never knew whether it was your family, whether it was your friends, on either side. It was particularly bad in Jefferson County and in Missouri because this state was divided. Other states, I originally came from Louisiana. Well, the people in Louisiana, most of them knew they were all Confederate, so you were not so afraid of your neighbors and what they were doing, whether they were spying on you there. In Illinois, most of them were federal, and so you weren't afraid. But here, you never knew whether you were on this side or that side of the question, whether or not people were spying on you, and both sides did horrible things to one another. If your neighbor got angry with you over something, it didn't have to do anything, nothing to do with the war at all. But if they got angry with you over something, they would accuse you of being a Confederate spy, or they would say that you were, Union, and that you had done something terrible to the Southern sympathizers. And so there was bitter feelings that lasted for many, many, many years in this area, particularly. The families also, Captain Buxton had a stepfather, and his stepfather was killed heading towards St. Louis. Well, Buxton was a federal officer, and people felt like that Pitzer was a Southern sympathizer and was meeting secretly in the woods with other Southern sympathizers. And so, although Buxton was not here at the time of the murder, they murdered his stepfather, and people believed that he had ordered the murder of his stepfather, and they even nearly lynched him at one point. About 2 years after the war was over with, he had gone to an auction with other people from the area, and somebody accused him of murder, and the crowd descended on him. He barely escaped with his life, because that is the kind of thing people would get up here in High Ridge. There were some gentlemen that were talking about the war, and one of them claimed that the other one had been a Southern sympathizer, and that a fight broke out, and shots were fired, or knives came out, and one of the men was killed. This was after the war was over with. So this kind of thing happened all the time, and particularly in areas like Jefferson County. So it was a particularly hard thing for the people that lived here, and those bitter feelings lasted for many, many years after the war ended. Do any of you have any specific questions? I may or may not be able to answer it.
I was wondering about the prison. It's a prison up in Albany.
Gratiot, I know.
Gratiot was there.
That was the one she went to.
Okay, she went to Gratiot.
She went to that for 2
And
months.
was that just strictly female?
No,
Okay.
there was a section, some said that the conditions were better for women in that prison than they were for men, but that, I don't know how wonderful the conditions could have been. I mean, especially for a woman who, wasn't used to that kind of thing.
So so most women women usually went to Gratiot, but the prison in Alton.
Yes.
Now, how did?
That one was one that took in, and that might be something that they know better than me. You want to talk? You want to
He
take?
might be able to
I
answer
do
it.
have one,
Okay.
but,
His encyclopedia.
there's one gentleman by the name of August Chernico, who's a member of the 1st Nebraska Infantry. His unit spent a lot of time around St. Louis and Cape Canaveral. But while they were in St. Louis, their regiment was put on Provost duty. One of the jobs he did was, rather than putting some of these women in prison, is they would put them on a steamer and send them down to Mississippi to more friendly territory for them, such as Nashville or further south of Mississippi, or maybe even Louisiana. And Chernico was actually charged with taking these ladies down to Nashville, where they marched off the transport and they were no longer a problem in St. Louis. So they didn't always put them in prison. Sometimes they would send them to other places as well.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I'd done a little bit of a genealogy on one side of the family, and during that time frame, there was 2 husband and wife that died on the same day in Alton, Illinois. And I'm wondering if
The conditions there in this
were they
particular-
just shot, or did they do that? Or?
It was so overcrowded. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm jumping.
Okay.
Go ahead, because you know a bit more than I do.
Alton's a military prison, and like many of the military prisons, you have thousands of guys being captured from all over the country, various skirmishes and battles going on. The conditions just get so crammed there that disease runs rampant pretty quickly. They'll often die of that, rather they won't be executed or
I was just wondering, because male and female, I thought was probably a married, well, it was a married couple because then they had the children.
And that happened a lot.
Did it?
There was one story that I had run across from, I think it was Washington County, where an older man was arrested because he was not in the battle, but they said that he was a sympathizer and that he got put into the prison, and I think it was the one in St. Louis, I believe it was, and he was put into that prison and got sick, and so his family started writing letters asking for him to be released because he was an old man and he was dying, and they asked for him to be released. Well, they dragged their feet until the man actually did die, and the sons were fighting in the Southern cause, and so they came home. It may be the same people. They came home and they sneaked home to help the mother settle the estate and everything, and to be with her because their father had died, and she had, of course, fed them because she was their mother. Well, somebody found out that the boys had come home, and they put her in the prison, and it nearly killed her too. She did actually manage to live through it, but there were several letters that were written where they were begging for her to be let out because she was an elderly woman, and she had, they had just come home to take care of their mother because their father had died. So I mean, like I said, you can imagine how bitter people were during that period of time. Yes, ma'am.
During the film there, those two ladies, do they know what happened, what happened the rest of their lives after
Well,
the
they
war?
did tell you in the movie, I believe they eventually phased out of,
Right.
One of them became a nurse, and they eventually phased out and became women again, and they married, and
Oh, okay.
I know one of them, at least it said she had children. I don't remember what they said about the other one, but
The one released the book in like 1886 or something like that, I think they said.
and they wrote books and about their experiences and all. So any more of those kinds? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I just have a little information
Okay.
on a local skirmish. When I was a girl, we had some very good friends down on Empire Road. And he had a drawer full of, apparently there was a skirmish there where his garden spot was. He had a drawer full of items he found in his garden, like wagon tags. There was bullets, there was eyeglasses.
Oh, wow.
And when people, I don't know who they bought the place from, it had been a big log home, and it was covered, with that, I don't know what they call that old type of siding. But anyway, there was a skirmish there, and whoever they bought the place from told him that the building had been an outpost for General Grant. So
I don't.
even Della Lang didn't, I told Eric about this, even Della Lang didn't know about that because I volunteered with her at Feed My People, and I spoke to her about it, and she didn't know anything about it.
Pretty much everything that there
I
was.
know.
But yes, and there were lots of little things like that happening. The only battle or skirmish that happened in Jefferson County that we know about was when they burned the bridge
Right.
at Blackwell Station. And that was one of because Missouri was in the center of, the United States, everybody wanted St. Louis and Missouri, and that the railroads at that time were the supply lines. And so the Confederates thought, well, if we blow up the bridges and cripple that, then the Union can't resupply. And so they were very, very careful to try to take care of that. Well, this particular battle turned out to be a victory for the Confederates, and it's almost a funny story because the Union soldiers were camped out there by where that railroad bridge was, waiting because they had heard rumors that something was going to happen, and the Confederates came up through Blackwell Station and got their stuff together and then came out there and they surprised them, even though they knew that they were coming, they surprised them. Well, the captain, I forgot his name off the top. I should have. It was the Confederate,
Debbie Thompson.
okay, he had an Indian that kind of like the Lone Ranger and Tonto that would come with him whenever he would, do his raids. And whenever they came up on those people and they were burning the bridges, he was shouting back to his Native American because he didn't want to take prisoners, he just wanted to scare them. So he was pretending like all of those men were natives. Well, people were scared to death of him. He was saying, don't let them cross over because all those natives will kill these men. And so they went back and they reported that there were hundreds they had the Indians on their side and the natives were there, you know, and that they would have killed them if they had fought any harder. But it was a temporary Confederate victory at that point, but the federal troops did chase them down and ended up, chasing them out of the area, and there were lots of deaths that happened there. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so what happened, like she said, the Union unit that was surprised there, I believe, was Company I, 33rd Illinois. We know them also as the Normal Regiment because they were from Normal, Illinois, so they also were given the nickname the Brains Regiment because a lot of the unit guys there were raised from the local college in Normal. Company I was sent there to guard the bridge, like many other units. In fact, there's a second day to the Battle of Blackwell. There's the Battle of Blackwell, and there's the Battle of Big River Bridge, which is what she just described.
Yes.
They were kind of caught up with it by surprise because they knew Thompson was in the area, but they didn't expect him to come and attack a railroad bridge and have to have such a small unit. But it was easy pickings, pretty much. And Thompson is a cavalry raider, so he's known for attacking supply lines and things such as that. But the next day, after they had captured Company I, J and K, one under Captain Lippincott, and I don't remember the other gentleman's name, came up from their positions further down the tracks because they were stationed from Ironton all the way up to, I believe, northern Jefferson County. Two companies came up to try and hit Thompson in the rear, but Thompson had a much larger force than two companies can handle. So after a little bit of skirmishing, Thompson managed to drive them further back down the tracks. He would not take Company I with him. And he would go on about his raid, and the 33rd would be briefed and joined back down at Ironton, and then they would be sent to Fredericktown, where they would actually fight Thompson again at the Battle of Fredericktown. But I don't think that turned out quite as well for Thompson. He didn't take a lot of casualties, but he tried surprising them, but they caught on to his trick.
Well, that was part of Price's raid, wasn't it?
No, that will not.
Okay.
This occurs in
That was before,
1861.
wasn't it?
Price's raid occurs in 1864.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so,
The encyclopedia, what's the name of the Indian?
Ajax.
I guess, yeah. I would like, if you two wouldn't mind, because you were playing Ashokan's
Ashoka
farewell during the reading, but because you had to play it
It's
quietly,
too
we
loud.
would really love to hear it where we can actually
Yeah.
hear it. Would the two of you mind doing it one more time where we can hear it? Let's turn that on, so.
Duncan over there, the one with the encyclopedia, we call him.
Yeah.
He's the historian down at Pilot Knob.
Oh,
Really?
really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay then.
He works around a lot of area here, and we're twisting his arm, and the state now, we're trying to redo that film, we're gonna redo that film of the history of Pilot Knob, the battle down there. Hopefully we'll get that done.
And
We're
two
getting
weekends,
started this year.
Turner Brigade
Yeah,
will be doing
that's-
a
Yeah,
drill down
they
there.
go down there
Guys
by-
are interested in seeing, reenact, it's not a reenactment, it's a spring drill, which means that they will be working their companies over and getting ready for the season. So in 2 weekends, if you wanna go down and see that, that might be something you might be interested in.
And then the next reenactment's September of 20?
2020.
Yes, 2020.
The 26th and 27th, the actual days of the battle.
26th, they have a school day before that, which is really great. They have local schools, and I think one from Webster Groves is even coming down this year.
Yeah, they have more coming than they were expecting.
Yeah, that was really good.
We also have a direct descendant in here. I'm not going to tell who you are, but this Captain Buxton. So he's, things in our history here in Jefferson County really close. You were asking about earlier. So someone sitting next to you somewhere in here.
Sure, a lot of
Careful what you say about me.
Look under your chair.
from Jefferson County, a lot of
Northern aggression, we are not dirty rebels.
Missouri's a very confused state. I always call us the bipolar state of the museum because you don't
That's
know what we
right.
want.
Oh, if you don't mind, if you'll play that for us so we can actually hear it.
Yeah. Wait through 1 through and then 1 through. Double check. Yeah. I play better standing up, sitting down. I have to sit down. Yeah. Thank you.